for joining us again today on Practical Church Planting. Today we're going to be giving you our 2022 church predictions.
So Happy New Year.
Happy New
We did
Year.
this last year. People listened to it a lot.
Yes.
So we thought we'd do it again.
Yep.
So we have 9 for you of what we think will happen this year. So we hope you had a great holiday season. We hope this year is great for you. And of course, the end of this year, we'll also recap these, see how we did.
That's right.
So we have 9. How this will go is we'll go back and forth. I have 5. Brian has 4. Granted, I did my 5. I wrote mine first, and so Brian probably would have wrote some of these as well, but
Yep.
he just wrote ones that I didn't. So we'll kind of go back and forth. Start with me, go back to Brian. Here's number 1, church prediction for 2022.
Here we go.
Number 1 is this. Now, again, this is not necessarily like we believe most strongly this will happen. It's just the order that these are in. They're all equally weighted.
Yes.
Churches that engage their people the best during the week will see the most numerical growth. I saw somebody, I think it was Kerry Newhoff on his blog, he put it this way: attendance will no longer drive engagement. Engagement will drive attendance. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. I mean, I wrote these down, and then I read that. I was like, oh, says it better.
Yeah.
So again, the prediction is churches that engage their people the best during the week will see their most numerical growth. He said attendance will no longer drive engagement. Engagement will drive attendance. So traditionally, it's like if you come on Sunday, and then we can get you everywhere else. Now, we still strongly believe in Sunday, and it's really important. And it is still true that people that come on Sunday still have the opportunity to engage elsewhere.
Yep.
But we have seen this past year, 2021, the people that are most engaged outside of New City are the ones that, outside of Sundays necessarily, are the ones that are inviting friends and all that sort of thing. And so we talked about, some of our last episodes. Maybe we'll do an episode on it if we figure it out better about how groups is something we're trying to focus more on. Again, Sunday morning is still vitally important. It's still we still want it to be as good as it always is. But we know traveling, people are coming less, but yet an attendance group, people still attend a group seems to be more consistently than Sunday morning. And so we would just say that if you can figure out how to engage your people best during the week, that will actually drive attendance and engagement, not like trying to get them on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, and I think part of, to echo what you're saying, part of this is engaging people in person where that's possible. Because when you hear engage people during the week, especially kind of like where we are right now in the, well, who knows, this is coming out in a couple weeks. Maybe we won't be in the midst of COVID, but probably in the midst of COVID.
You have a lot of faith in 3 weeks.
No, I'm just kidding. Maybe by the end of 2022.
Yeah.
But when we talk about engaging people during the week, I think a lot of times we go to like engaging people online, which we'll talk about stuff like that. But I think right here, at least when I was saying this, specifically talking about engaging them in ways that are in person. So things like community groups and stuff like that. If we can engage people more during the week, then they're going to be a lot more engaged on Sundays versus vice versa.
Yeah. So I would say yes. How am I trying to do this? I think the online stuff's still important. We've done a lot of episodes on like doing videos and stuff. One of our more recent ones on the stuff they do during the week. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is not like try to find like during the beginning of COVID in 2020, where it's online Bible study, online communion, online this. Like people need to be in community, and a part of that could be some of your online engagement stuff during the week. But also, if they're having relationships, they're more likely to be invested. They're more likely to come on a Sunday. They're more likely to invite their friends. And so we don't really have a practical, here's what you should do, because these are just predictions. But trying to think of ways, and we're going to talk about how not busying people. So the solution is not plan something every night of the week and that you want people to come to. But just maybe one thing that they can do during the week, because we think if you can do that well, you will actually see numerical growth, even on Sundays. Yeah. But you can't just rely on trying to do an amazing Sunday in just that, because as we've seen, that's not what it was.
Yeah, we've just been seeing, I think we talked about in the last episode, but what we've been seeing in our small little experience here is that people are being a lot more consistent in their groups than on Sundays. Yeah. Like it's rare, or not I shouldn't say rare, but it's more rare that people will miss a group than they will miss a Sunday. They might attend a Sunday 1 to 2 to 3 times a month maybe, and maybe miss one group a month. Those are just kind of random numbers, but they're less likely to miss group than they are to miss church, which maybe that was the case for a long time and I just never noticed, but I definitely never noticed that trend before this year.
So as much. Yeah, just to think through it again, because not everyone at your church is in a group. So trying to think of creatively how you want to do that. But again, churches that engage people during their best during the week will see the most numerical growth. Figure out what that looks like. But that's what we thought.
There we go.
Brian, number 2.
2022 church prediction number 2: growth in giving will outpace growth in attendance. So this, I think we talked about this briefly, but this is just kind of some of this is just based on what we've kind of seen, or at least for me, what I've kind of seen towards the end of this year, and I imagine things will kind of go in that same trajectory going into next year. Um, but what we've seen is that our growth in giving, and I don't think this is unique to us, that our growth in
Yeah.
giving has been growing in a way that our attendance just hasn't. Our attendance is kind of creeping back towards pre-COVID numbers, not quite there yet. Giving is way outshined pre-COVID, and
Yeah.
for a while as this was going on, it was kind of the month to month of this is probably just a fluke, and it's going to change any day now. But especially now, as we're at the end of the when recording this, we're at the end of the year and looking back over the entire year, it's very clear that it's not a fluke. And I don't think
Yeah.
this is something that's unique to us.
Oh no, it's definitely not. I mean, many of you probably listen to this. I mean, I know some churches have had a hard time financially, but a lot of churches have experienced maybe not a lot of numerical growth, maybe decline in attendance, but increase in giving. Now, part of it we would say is because people are not coming as much on Sundays.
Yep.
So we have our attendance is not what pre-COVID was, but our engagement we would say is more
Yep.
based on community groups. Obviously, the number of people giving is higher, and so again, that's another thing. Going back to the first point as well, trying to engage people other ways than just Sunday. Which again, Sunday is still extremely important, but growth in giving will outpace growth in attendance.
This
I
is
also agree.
this and the first one when talking about just ways that people are engaging that's outside of Sundays, and then looking at how people are engaging through giving, I think has kind of changed the way that we're looking at the health of the church
Mm.
for us. Because I know for a while it was like not all negative, but it was kind of frustrating where we weren't seeing numbers come back to the way they were. We're like, things seem to be going well, but we
Yeah.
just can't seem to be getting back to that point until we started looking at some of these other numbers that we track, and realizing that things actually, I would say, as a church, we're a lot healthier than before. We may not be numerically as big on a Sunday, but if you look at kind of the state of the church now, not just like financial state, but state of the people in the church now versus the state of the people in the church were, I guess, pre-COVID, I would say things are looking a lot healthier now than they were then.
Yeah.
But if you just look at attendance numbers, you wouldn't say that.
Yeah, it just makes me this makes me laugh. I don't know if I should share this, but whatever.
Do it.
I'm gonna share. I was telling Brian because I had Brian send me a list of our top 10 givers, so I could personally follow up with them and say thank you. And I was like, oh, the church is in the right direction financially when the lead pastor is no longer in the top 10 givers list.
That's right. That's right.
Because you have people that are giving. So,
Yep.
Yep, growth in giving will outpace growth in attendance. I bet we'll continue to see more of that.
Agreed.
Number 3, Bible teaching will be more evangelistic than topical series / life skills help. Now, Brian also had a prediction similar to this, so we just put in this one as well.
Put it together.
Here's what this means. The last couple decades, maybe, topical preaching was seen as more evangelistic. And here, we're not saying one's better or worse. You could be faithful or unfaithful either way. This is not that you need to preach through books of the Bible. We generally speaking are a fan of doing that, but we're not. It's not like if you don't, you're bad. Don't think that at all. But it was like topical series are kind of more evangelistic, and the churches that preach primarily through books of the Bible are more like deep.
Right.
We think that it is increasingly evangelistic to actually preach through the Bible and not just do topical series. Because again, cultural Christianity is getting less and less. If people are going to come, especially if they're going to come on a Sunday when they could be other places, it's because they want to be there and they want to learn something. And as great as relationship advice and financial advice and all these things are, they're not there at the church to learn how to create a budget, which I'm all for churches doing financial peace or whatever to help that. I think that's really important, but that's not why they're going to come. And so we think preaching through books of the Bible, for example, is very evangelistic. Again, doing it in a way that is connecting and relevant and showing people, but people don't know what's in the Bible. People are fascinated. People learn a lot. This is why, again, for us, Sunday mornings are really important because it's like, where else are people going to learn this stuff? If they're not going to, it's helpful to have a quote unquote professional spend a few hours studying the text to explain things to people that just wouldn't have the time or know where to look it up. So, so I think that too. Again, I'm not against, and when I say life skills help, I mean things like financial peace or whatever the various things you could do. I think those are fine, but I think that they should not be in place of community groups or whatever you call your things or discipleship or whatever. They should be like things that like make your church calendar or whatever after you've planned all of the big stuff first. And if it can fit, that's great. Yeah. And if you're a smaller church and you don't have the ability to do financial peace, is the one that comes to my mind because everyone's familiar with it. Like, you shouldn't feel bad about it. Again, that stuff is fine, but that's not why people can learn that stuff in a lot of places. They can't learn about Jesus, you know, in a lot of places.
Sure.
And so we think it's actually evangelistic. It's like actually strategically advantageous to you to focus on scripture and applying it and not just like focusing like on relationship series. I mean, when it comes in scripture, you talk about it, but the focus being on like, the Bible, not the topical stuff.
Yeah, when I was kind of putting my thoughts together, I struggled with this one a little bit because I wrote down something very similar, and I was trying to kind of just determine if I think that that's true, or if it's just because this is more of the circles that we run in. You know, now that we've kind of made not like now that we made that shift, we kind of always have been preaching through books of the Bible, and obviously we're in Acts 29, so a lot of the churches we have relationships do something similar. So I was trying to determine, is this true across the board, or is this just because this is what I see a lot? And I just kept coming back to the more and more conversations I have with people, whether in the church or outside of the church, the more people seem to be just curious about the Bible in general. And especially it's coming back to people that like grew up in church, because like especially people that I know that go here that have grown up in church. I've heard so many questions coming up recently that's just like, this is just so much different than I remember being taught. I mean, and a lot of it has come from me as well. Like growing up in the church in a more topical series type of church. I'll say just a lot of things as we've gotten more into things, it's like, this is just different than I remember being taught or remember learning. And I've had a lot of conversations with that, like people like that with people. And so I think that I think people want this more and more and want to understand more about this Bible that like to a lot of people and to us, like, it's weird and confusing and stuff. And it's like, and so like, I feel like people want to know more about it more so than just want to hear like you said, like how to handle your money and stuff like that. I think that stuff can be fine as supplements maybe, but like, I think that people really want to know what's being taught in the Bible. And so some of the stuff that maybe in the past would have, I don't know, we would have been kind of scared away from teaching a little bit and you know, afraid that it's not as seeker friendly or whatever. I just don't think that's as much of an issue anymore.
I mean, I think Bible teaching, and again, topical series can be Bible teaching, but I think you know what I mean. It is more seeker friendly than topical series because again, people are coming to church less. They don't care. They're not impressed by, you know, I don't know. Like and again, I know we're shaped by experiences, but I would have no desire if I was just. Again, you could say, well, you ministry, whatever. But if I took a normal job out of vocational ministry, I would have no desire to go to a church that preaches topical series. And I get it. I've studied the Bible more than the average person because I'm a pastor. So like, I don't care. I want to learn what the Bible says about that stuff. And I'm not saying never do a series on it. Do it every once in a while. It's totally fine. But it just seems to us it was actually more evangelistic to focus on Scripture and groups around that and the implications of that rather than let me try to get you here to tell you about how to have a better relationship and kind of add the Bible onto it to show you, hey, see, the Bible's right about this stuff.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Number 3. Number 4.
So number 4, let me count down. Okay, the online church trend won't grow much more, and we'll see a swing back to a focus on in-person, even in larger churches. Now, one of these, Dylan said he disagrees with, and I don't know which one. I'm curious if it's this one now that I reread them.
It is this one.
It is this one.
But I said it could be semantics.
Okay,
so explain yourself, Brian.
So obviously we're not going to come, like, kind of, if you listen to the last episode, we're not going to come out of this with, like, cold, hard data of if we're right or wrong. But what I see more of, I think the focus of online church, not like social media, but as it was, like, in the, like, beginning of the pandemic, like, church online being one of our campuses almost to that focus of we're okay with you attending church online 100% and that being like the equivalent of coming to church. I don't think that trend's going to grow much more. I think we're kind of seeing the peak of it maybe. And I think that we'll see a swing back to a focus on encouraging people to join in person. I think that's pretty much true right now for a lot of the smaller churches. Like that's true for us right now. And I think that's true for a lot of people, but especially in the larger churches that are kind of driving the online church movement, I think that we'll see more of a focus on coming back in person.
It's just funny because I'm looking at my next one and how they sound like they're different, but they actually work together.
Yep.
So I would agree with that in the sense of like focusing on like just the idea of I would say this way, the idea of like on a Sunday morning that either watch online or come in person and they're kind of equal.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of that. Some people will still do it, but I was on a larger church website recently, and I guess part of it too is, I mean, just to be honest, when you're a larger church, obviously you have financial struggles and stuff too, but like you've got probably more in the bank and you're more, you can weather storms better than smaller
Sure.
churches.
Yeah.
So like a lot of smaller churches, you would never hear. Just choose which one works for you because like, well, we need you to come
Yeah.
because we need you to come. It's also better for you. But I think too, yeah, larger churches even many of them will also be like, let's not act like it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Again, COVID it's still here. We thought, when we did our predictions last year that would be gone by now.
Yep.
It's to the point where like it's here. And if you're just, I don't think COVID is the reason. Again, who knows what will happen, but it's the primary reason most people are not coming back anymore.
Mhm.
Like we're just living our life. It's been 2 years.
Yep.
Like even the people that are really COVID conscious that I've talked to a lot are kind of like, what am I supposed to do? Whatever.
Yeah.
Just live my life. So that's not the reason. So yeah, I would totally agree. I think emphasizing them as if they're equal will do you a disadvantage because it's not. I mean, relationships are better, and
Yep.
people want to be with each other.
Yep. And I think we've kind of are maybe moving out of, or soon will be moving out of the day of like, I don't even know how they would put this, like innovating for online services specifically.
Yeah.
Like not social media in general, but just trying to like do it. Like we've kind of hit this now where we're like, we think our live stream is good for
But
our
if
budget.
you want to send
It's
us
pretty
another
good.
camera, we'd be fine with that.
Yep.
But in terms of how we do it,
could improve,
Yeah.
like, and maybe we'll improve it as budget increases and stuff. But we're not at the point anymore like we were at one point
Right.
of we need to figure out some way to change it. We got to a happy, okay place, and this is probably where it's going to be. And we much rather focus on like how can we improve a Sunday morning or something when someone is actually here in person.
Yep.
Then how can we improve making this kind of what we see as just a supplement when you're not able to make it better.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we would encourage you getting to a level, wherever you are church wise. It doesn't need to compete with a big church, but like where it's decent for your size, and then focusing on in person. I was thinking about this last week. I was looking at this church's website where I feel preface this. I feel like we looked at other church's website. This is not a condemnation or judgment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff we do wrong too. It's just thoughts that we have as we're doing this, and they're doing a. When you watch online, they pre-record the sermon where the pastor just preaching to the camera.
Mhm.
And so on Sunday morning, you would watch that. You wouldn't watch the live stream.
Yep.
And they have the ability to do a decent live stream, but they do it that way. And I was just thinking, I personally would not go that route. Because I know there's an advantage of if someone's watching on a screen, they want you to like looking at the screen primarily instead of looking around the auditorium. But again, I think it shows like, this is I would advise against that because going with this point, online church in the sense of like it's equal, it's not. And so I think there's advantage as long as your online live stream is okay, where people I think appreciate you speaking to an audience. They can hear the laughter. They're probably a little bit more engaged. And then they also know that like this is our primary focus is people here, not trying to create something where it's just easy for you to access online. Again, if you're sick, if you're out of town, or if you just don't feel like coming, here it is. But it's not our primary focus. And so with this point, I would encourage not doing a separate sermon for the camera and posting that. I would allow people to see what they're in some ways missing out on and show the live stream, not a separate sermon recorded.
In the brief time that we were actually like shut down, we did this obviously because everyone was doing it. It was the only option. And I remember going back and watching them. And at the time we would make sure all the staff was on like engaging with people online because obviously we weren't meeting in person. So like we were all watching it live, even though it was pre-recorded, and watching that compared to the times when I watch our live stream now, which is pretty rare. But if like I'm serving kids or something, occasionally I'll go back and watch it. Like I would so much rather watch what's live now, even though like technically it's maybe not as great of quality because we can't put the camera on stage in front of the person.
But even when we upload the sermon audio or the sermon video, we take it from the service. We don't do its own thing, and I think that's a better experience.
Exactly, it is. And I would rather see someone not focus on me, but engage in who's right there and be able to hear people responding and kind of hear what it's actually like in person, rather than someone just kind of speaking directly to the camera. I think a lot of people are like that. I think a lot of people want to know what the actual service is like rather than just you talk to them.
So speaking of the camera, again, has its benefits, but I think maybe the off-the-cuff remarks, the random things that people thought was funny that you can't do if you're just talking to a camera. I think that actually definitely outweighs the focus straight on the camera quality.
It was funny. That this was brought to mind, and then we can move on from this. But there's a church that I know and like that I've listened to occasionally, not like regularly. And I remember semi recently, maybe a month or so ago, listening to their recording on their podcast, and I couldn't see what it looked like, but I was listening to it and I was like, something just feels off about what I'm listening to. And I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was like, some of the kind of like more engaging like stories are told kind of quickly
Mm.
and I'm familiar with the guy and I was like, not in the way that I'm familiar with. And then I kind of came to realize this was going on. And I was like, this is the recording for the camera.
Oh,
So
yeah.
like I can't no one's and they're like places a big room and stuff like that. I was like, and it's weird I can't hear anybody there. And I remember thinking like this just it feels like it sounds kind of awkward. Like it doesn't sound like what I know that church sound or feels like,
Yeah.
actually having been there before. And then I kind of put that together and I was like, I don't know that I would make that same decision because I feel like even just listening to the audio, I feel like there's something missing and I'm not getting the experience that you would get listening to the
Yeah.
church's normal audio.
That's good.
So anyways,
So our third one was that online church trend won't grow much more. We'll see a swing back to a focus on in-person, even in large churches.
Yep.
This fourth one, let me explain myself. Might sound different, but they actually go together.
Yeah.
Where is it? Number 4, churches that prioritize online presence will grow in person much more than those who do not. Now, by online presence, I'm not talking about a Sunday morning live stream.
Yep.
We're talking about what we've talked about a couple episodes ago. I think it's episode 234, which is also back in July of 2021. We talked about YouTube, which I highly recommend you listen to that one if you haven't. But if you care about online stuff throughout the week, you will actually grow numerically because people want to see what you're doing. Now I don't know, like 2 or 3 episodes ago, I forget, we had like specific, it's like something you could do to expand your reach. We go through
Yep.
Bible in a minute, Bible studies, various things that you can do that we would say you should do at least one of these once a week.
Mhm.
And so it's not just uploading your sermon, but also, spend the time to do this as well. And if you do that, you'll actually see more in-person growth because people are A, they want community. B, they're going to be reminded, interacted. Things might be shared. They're going to like be impacted by it in some way.
Yep.
Now, again, some of this is shaped. Well, a lot of this is anecdotal, shaped by our experience. We live in Raleigh, which is a highly moved to area. It's like relative to population, it's like one of the top 10 fastest growing for like the last 10 years or
Forever.
whatever.
Yeah.
And so I get that. It's not like everybody's story, but almost everybody says when they come something about live stream or online.
Mhm.
They either Googled us, which of course is not new, or they watched something, or they saw something. It's kind of funny to me. I feel like that's our number one by far. And then our second one, in terms of like new people that weren't invited by somebody. The second one is they saw our church sign.
The road sign.
I'm like,
Which
how
is-
does this help? Like, I don't understand.
Which is not if you've ever seen it, is not in a good position
Yeah, it's
and
not.
is not super
like,
engaging looking.
We're on the road, but we're behind a gas station. So like, unless you're like looking in there, you don't. But anyway,
Yeah.
people, there's a McDonald's right next to us, so people go there and they're
Yep.
like, whatever, which
Yep.
is happening with us. But all that to say, it's a good test case where people are moving to a new area, which you're going to have even people move all the time.
Mhm.
They are looking online, and we are not by far like one of the top largest churches in the Raleigh area.
No.
Not even close. I don't even know where you would put us, but
not even on the road we're on. Like we
That's
have a, we
true.
have a,
There is
we
a
have
massive church.
gigantic church like 2 miles down the road.
no, like 0.25 miles down the road.
Yeah, I don't know how far it
it's
is.
not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And I'm sure they get people too. But it is just telling to me how everybody always mentions online stuff. Whether they watch some stuff, again, this is why we recommend having a video,
Mhm.
not just the audio of your sermon. It doesn't have to be a live stream, but get a good camera, set it up straight. Stuff that they saw during there. It's just that people see this stuff. And if you prioritize it, it communicates to people that you actually care. And you're not just come hear this sermon and go to a Bible study and that's all you're going to hear from the church. And so again, I think churches that prioritize their online presence, not necessarily their live stream, but just their overall online presence, will grow in person much more than those who do not.
I think this is going to be I think this could have been a prediction for 2021 and will be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Like I think this will continue to be important. Just this morning I was listening to on a news podcast about how they're talking about they're kind of like spending each day like recapping some aspect of 2021, and they're talking about how 2021 was the year of the online content creator, of like how and they talked about how streaming services are doing things differently for this, and then all these different obviously social media platforms, how they're innovating and doing things, but that we've never seen obviously a world of this much online content or this much importance on online content as we have in 2021. And obviously, I don't think anyone thinks that's going to change.
Yep.
And so, whatever that online content looks like for you, obviously, go back to that podcast episode and we give you some thoughts of what things you can do. But whatever it looks like for you, it's going to impact your growth or lack of growth. Like it
Yep.
just will. And we can complain about it, we can fight about it, or we can embrace it and use it in a way that's that's biblical, like that we're comfortable with, that's not necessarily like going against any conviction that you might have. It's not like we have to overturn everything we're doing, but there's ways that you can engage people online and still have your convictions and
Yeah.
still do things in a way that you feel like is biblical and that you're comfortable with, and not sacrificing anything morally or anything like
Yeah,
that.
and I would say for us too, again, our primary focus is in person groups, Sunday, whatever, but like in real life relationships. That's what we want to have happen. It's
Mhm.
our goal is not grow a big YouTube channel just to say, hey, we've got all these people who we're never going to see, which I still think it's fine. Like if
Right.
you can grow your church's YouTube channel and you're putting out content that is biblical and helpful and talks about Jesus, people should watch it. That's great.
Yep.
And that's fine. That's a byproduct, but that's not our goal for this. It's not trying to grow a big online platform. It's trying to reach people in your community. And we think churches that prioritize online presence will do that.
And one way that, or one reason that I'm like comfortable with everything we've done online, and the fact that like our YouTube, I forget how many we have. Our YouTube channel is a lot bigger than our in-person attendance.
Yeah.
Or our our subscriber count.
And I would say,
But-
before you forget,
Yeah.
for like probably a lot of people's ours, but ours is like out of balance. Like it's a
Yes.
way higher
Yes.
online than what you would assume if you came here.
And the reason I think that it's fine is because everything we put out is, in my mind, like obviously, not say like everything we do is great, but like everything we put out is something that I think is beneficial to
Our people.
whoever.
And,
Yeah, to our people, and also to anyone
Yeah.
watching it. Like in other words, we're not just putting out stuff that's like on like just YouTube, for example. We're not just putting out stuff that's just for fun or just being silly, just to up just to up our subscriber count. But I think we put out stuff that's like
Yeah.
good, like not good like quality wise, which it's fine, but like good, like biblically good, like Bible studies and stuff like that. It's where I remember like it was like 2 years ago maybe. Pro Church Tools, Brady Shearer put out a thing, and it kind of became pretty big about how like the most common searches in relation to faith, of like how to study the Bible and stuff like that, and how it was all like Christian vloggers and not churches, which obviously like, well, they have a huge, if someone has, millions of followers, then our little church isn't going to come up anyways. But
Right.
I get his point. Like I want people to look to a church to get those answers,
Yeah.
And so like I don't have any guilt about the fact that we have a growing YouTube channel, because I think that I would be comfortable showing any of the content we make to anyone who's at any point in their faith. It's not
Yeah.
just us doing things just to hopefully we get more followers.
Yeah. Which I'm not opposed to doing some funny videos on there.
No, not at all. But that's not the main focus.
but that's not the main focus,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly.
All right, that was number 5. Brian, number 6.
All right, number 6. The this is a negative one. Sorry. A large number of we'll see a large number of pastors resigning. I think we're seeing that in 2021. So I think that'll continue, but maybe grow a little bit in 2022. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that, I mean, if we've discussed before, 2020 was a tough year. 2021, I think for a lot of people was a harder year. And 2022, maybe people will see some relief, but
Yeah.
also maybe not. Like some of these issues that we thought would be wrapped up at the end of 2021 weren't. And maybe we'll continue to get, or maybe we'll get better, but maybe won't. But also things like, obviously we're seeing, like, as they've deemed, like the Great Resignation, and people leaving things for pay reasons, which we all want to assume and hope that pastors will never do anything like that, but that's just unrealistic.
And if you do need to get paid more, that's just also a real thing.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I think that we're gonna see a larger number of pastors resigning. Whether that means moving to different churches, or doing things for pay reasons, or just getting out of ministry altogether, I think those combined will be a large number.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
negative
definitely.
one, but I think that it is a reality.
So that being said, let's move to number 7, which I think if you do this well, actually can help a little bit of the resignation, maybe slow down, especially if you
Yeah,
feel really burned
I
out.
agree.
Here's what we would say. Number 7, simplified churches will engage people better than complex ones. Now, this is not, there's a book called Simple Church. And so I guess you could, if you've read it, I mean, I guess it's kind of the same idea that churches that don't try to do a million things, but just do a few things well,
Mhm.
will do a lot better. You feel a lot better. The leadership will feel a lot healthier, because also when you do a lot of things and your church is smaller, you feel like you have to be at everything, which is not helpful as well. And so we think if you just consistently do a few things as well as you can do them, and you're okay with not being the best at everything and having things, you will do fine. It's kind of like we talk about this online stuff and social media and YouTube. It's not like you do a few things and you're going to get explosive growth.
Mhm.
It's do this over time, and your channel and your engagement will slowly and consistently grow.
Yep.
And maybe after a while, it's like Jim Collins, what is it called, his wheel. I'm blanking on it.
Oh, I don't remember.
Whatever.
Yes, I know what you're talking
His
about.
success wheel. It's like after a while, things just kind of take off,
Yeah.
and you don't really know why. It's just because you've been doing good things consistently. And so, again, for us, you don't have to have a women's ministry, a women's ministry, a high school, a middle school, an elementary school, a preschool, a baby, like everything
Mhm.
broken out, groups, international missions, local missions, a charity. I mean, you do the few things that you guys are passionate about,
Mhm.
but don't feel the weight to do everything, and be okay with doing things that aren't super organized. We've talked about, we've got a woman in our church who has started to do these monthly gatherings.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to figure out what to do with it. Like for now, it's just these women come together once a month and they do stuff, and it's going really well. It's one of those things where people always have ideas, but then like they just fizzle out. She's
Yeah.
like doing a really good job.
Yeah.
And like we're not, I was talking to Brittany, Ryan's wife. She's on staff here, and we were emailing, and she was like, someone called it a women's ministry, and she was like, yeah, it's not. Like we don't want to call it that because we don't have a men's ministry. We don't have a women's ministry, and we're not against it. And perhaps maybe one day,
Mhm.
but from now, it's just more of an informal thing they're doing. We do Sunday mornings, which again I think are really fine to prioritize. I think there's like this pushback of like they're not the end all be all, but they really matter.
Sure. Yep.
Groups, like our partnership stuff that we ask people to do, and we do extra stuff, and it's fine to think through those things. So again, engaging people outside Sunday morning, that women's thing is fine.
Mhm.
I started recently doing a men's Bible study, which has been really fine. Like I do my community group. The men's Bible study is something we do on a Thursday morning near the church. And that stuff's fine, but it's not like the official stuff that the church is doing.
Right.
So just do a couple of things. If you do them well, again, we were talking about this earlier about engaging people during the week. If you try to plan something every single night, like that's just too much, and nobody wants to be there, and you're going to have to be there, and you're going to get burnt out, and you're going to get frustrated. So pick a couple of things, do them well. Like don't feel guilty that you don't have something to do every night. Like how else are you going to last 50 years? Not by doing something every night. And like in ministry is difficult, but it can be you can enjoy it. I feel like there's like this guilt of like you can't like be happy that you're in ministry.
Yeah.
Part of that is when you have too much going on. So I don't know. I feel like I'm talking in circles, but simplified churches will engage people better than complex ones that do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I'm going to read my number 8 because they go as hearing you explain it. They're very similar. So I'm going to read my next one, then give my thoughts on the two together. But what I was thinking is that people care more about community than what the church than what church has the best options for them.
Hmm.
So it's kind of similar to what I was thinking, or to what you're saying. Is I think people care a lot more about a place they feel connected, about a place that they feel welcome. Like if, like we said, if you look at our church, we do not have the best or most options, even even on our road. Anyway, because we
Yeah.
just I mean, obviously part of it is we're smaller, but also we don't try and create something that'll fit every need for everybody because we just don't have the bandwidth to do that. Like it's not even possible at our stage. But even if it was, it's not something that we really want to do. But we see people engaging, and I think people care more about engaging in a place that they feel like they can engage and build relationships and have community more so than who has the most options for me to choose between. Like right now, I lead our community groups, and I'm talking to a handful of people that are newer about joining groups, and it's pretty much coming down to, because we have some that are full, we don't have a huge number of them. We need more. It's pretty much coming down to like, this is your one option. So sorry, but I'm seeing more and more people than I did in the past say like, done. Like I'm good with that. Like here are my preferences. Like, and I've had people tell me this even like this week. Like here's my preference for like just using group example for I want a group to be this night, and I'll respond, that's not an option. I can give you this. This is literally like the only night I can give you, and they're like, done. And I think that in the past we would see people more so like I want something that kind of tailors to what I need, where we're seeing more of a shift to I just want to engage with people, and so I think people want something that's a little more simple and want something that they can just engage in more so than just give me all the options and let me choose what works best for me.
Yep. So again, simplified churches will engage people better than complex ones. People care more about community than what churches have the best options for them. Now, the pushback to this is we all have the anecdotal experience where someone says, your church doesn't offer this, I'm going to go to a church that does. It's happened to us multiple times. It's happened to you. If it hasn't happened, it will. And so that it can make you assume, well, this is just wrong. Well, that's going to happen.
Yep.
What would you rather have happen, though? Would you rather have higher engagement and knowing some people? And it's okay. It's like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like if like right now, we don't have a student ministry like of any kind.
Yep.
We don't really have very many middle school and high schoolers. If we had, we're not against a student ministry. If we had someone who wanted to run it and do it well, we would do it. We We just can't, and so we don't necessarily feel terrible about it. Now, as all the kids we have now, as they get older, it will just naturally be something we have to focus on.
Mhm.
And so, if you have if you're a new church and you have the people or the ability to do something that a lot of church plants don't do, do it if you can. This is not like you should only do X, Y, and Z, but just do the things that you think are going to be the most impactful and that you can actually run somewhat well. And that's what people care about. They just want to be engaged with. And again, especially with COVID, even in a culture where it's very personalized, we want stuff our way. People are just desperate for community and relationships. And so if they can get that, they will absolutely pass. I'm reading a book. I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And he talks about, it was written, 2012 or 13. But anyway, it talks about loyalty and how the difference between having a loyal customer and having manipulating customers, or people that are just there for a discount or the cheapest deal, but as soon as they get a better offer, they'll leave. And a loyal customer or person is someone who is willing to go through difficulty and uncomfortableness to stick with you. So they'll either be willing to pay more, they'll be willing to take a product that might not be as good as another product because they like you, have experience with you, they're going to stick with it. So he talks about Harley Davidson. I don't know if it's changed, but when this book came out, it took 6 months to get a bike made, and people are willing to pay more and wait longer because there's a loyalty to the brand, even though they could buy. He talks about rationality too, and how we're not rational, and which is obviously not true, and how you could buy a better bike for cheaper, but there's something about being loyal. And I'm not trying to say people need to be loyal to the church no matter what, but again, people will be loyal to you. They will go through inconvenience and lesser options maybe at your church than another church if they feel connected and have community. That is the most important thing.
Yep. And kind of the flip side to this is, like you're saying, this if you kind of ascribe to this will mean eventually you'll lose somebody. And for good reason. Not always out of and not always in a sense of oh, good riddance. You just want, whatever suits you. But in our example, we don't have a high school ministry. If someone came and they only had high school kids, yes, high schoolers can go to service. It's, they can understand what's going on. They're almost adults, but they need relationships too. This probably would not be the best fit.
And
for them.
It's not necessarily going to service the bad. It's that they also not going to have any other high schooler friends.
Exactly.
Here.
They need to it's good for the parents to have relationships, but it's good for the kids as well. And church is a good place for that. So if they were to come, obviously if they want to continue coming, that's great. But if they decide to look elsewhere, no one would be oh, I can't believe it. Yeah. That's just kind of the cost of not being able to do everything. So there is a little bit of a cost to it, but I think that the pros really outweigh the cost of actually having a more simplified church.
Yep, that's true.
And last one.
So I don't know if you've been encouraged or discouraged or neutral from these great 2022 predictions.
All of which will come true.
We'll see. The last one, hopefully, is I want to encourage you with this, that the ability to grow is greater than the ability to shrink. I don't know if that's the grammatically correct, but it sounds more catchy to say ability twice.
That's right.
The ability to grow is greater than the ability to shrink. Here's what I mean. You hear all the studies about people leaving church and quitting church and deconstruction, which means different things to different people. So whatever, all these things. And it just seems well, there's nothing we can do. I still just want to say, there are how many millions of people in America that are Christians that do want to go to church. So on the one hand, while maybe the average person is less inclined to go to the church than before, there are still a lot of people that are willing to do this. It's not that there's not a lack of Christians in the United States of America, or wherever you live, that don't want to do this. So I want to even if you hear the number shrinking, there's still a lot of people who are disconnected. That it's not like we're going. It'd be one thing if there were 1 million Christians in a country of 300 million. That's a really small number. I don't know what the number is, but it's a lot higher than that. So even if it shrinks, there's still a lot of people.
Yeah.
But secondly, some of the stuff we've been talking about. People need community. They need relationships. The church has always been a place, especially, in modern history, as people we have houses now, we have garages, we are highly mobile, so we move all the time. We just don't have friends. And especially if you don't really have friends at your workplace, where are you going to get them? Where are you going to go consistently? Friendships are created, I forget who I read this from originally, but friendships are created by repeated and spontaneous interactions. That's why when you're in school, you have more friends than you've ever had because you see these people all the time. And so you just bond with them. And a faith community is a great place where you see people all the time and you bond with them, you make relationships. And so people that might not even be necessarily interested in the faith stuff in the beginning, they just want a friend, and we can offer that to them. And so the ability to grow and to impact people and to reach people is much greater than the kind of doom and gloom. People are going to stop coming to church, and there's not going to be any more Christians anymore.
I think yes, I agree. I think one thing I've discovered recently is that, and this isn't like a new discovery, this is like a obvious thing, but that you social media in general has a big impact on your outlook on stuff like this. And what I mean by that is, now, I'm not the hugest social media person in the world. I have them, but the one I kind of spend the most time on right now is probably Twitter, even though I've never tweeted in my life. I don't think I've ever tweeted in my life. But like, because one of the reasons is because I found, like, with Facebook and Instagram, I this is gonna sound terrible, but like, I didn't like following people that I knew, just because like I got to a point where I was kind of felt like I don't want to know that much about everybody's life. Like, I want to, in a sense of, I want to be your friend, but also like, I don't know. It felt kind of weird. And so on Twitter, I follow like almost nobody that I know. And it's more just like reading people's ideas and stuff like that. And it's cool. But what I found like a handful of months ago is I just kind of happened to, because of some books I was reading and people that they were following, ended up following a lot of people who, while were people that are pretty brilliant, had even though we're believers, had a pretty negative outlook on Christianity, just like to put it that way. And so I realized I was reading a lot of like negative thoughts about the church, negative thoughts about where we are, and I was starting to get a lot of like negative thoughts in my mind about like kind of this exact thing of like, man, the future of the church is tough, and like all these things. And then I started realizing like I'm basing this not on any interactions I'm having in real life, but it's based on a lot of people whose thoughts I'm reading, who maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but not anyone who I'm actually interacting with. And so when I kind of like, not that like all that is useless, but when I started focusing more on the people that I actually know and talking to them, the more I realized that like people actually do want this. People actually are, in people that I know like personally, not just like personalities, but people that I actually know are encouraged by the state that the church is in and are excited to come back and stuff like that, and aren't all walking away in masses like some people can make it seem. And so I agree. I think that the future of the church is positive. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for growth in 2022, and not just opportunity for growth because like so many people left in 2021 that now we can bounce back.
Right.
But I think there's been opportunity for growth. I think it's going to continue that way for a long time.
Yeah. And I think too, we're all insulated to some degree. So in the church world, we can get insulated. Non-Christians can also get insulated. So
Sure.
if they're around a lot of people who are not Christians, which I'm not against media or whatever, but for lack of a better term, like elites in our culture. I mean, there's not a lot of, strong, I shouldn't say that, I can't judge people's heart, but like openly public Christians,
Sure.
I don't even know what I'm trying to say. So anyway, it's easy for people who are anti-Christian, or at least, not kind of against it, who have probably not very many real relationships with Christians, to assume nobody actually believes this stuff. Just like it's easy for Christians, for us to get insulated and only be around Christians.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't think at all it's doom and gloom. It's just like what they say, in the 1900s or whenever it was, sometime recently, about how, science and rationality would make, faith like gone, like Nietzsche and all those guys. And now it's like, it's as high as it's ever been. So people need it. And we have the ability to grow. Your ability to grow this year, even if you're struggling, don't have a lot of money, you can do things to impact people. And that's why God has you there.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Those are our 2022 church predictions. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Again, a couple of things to let you know about this year as you go. If you're not part of our Practical Church Planting Facebook group, you can ask questions. You can join. Of course, we're on any we're on any podcast platform. So wherever you're listening to this, hit that like and subscribe. Give us a review. It would be awesome. Like and subscribe. You don't like it on a podcast thing.
But if you're watching it.
If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you can like and subscribe. And then, of course, we have our Growing Your Launch Team course. If you go to practicalplanting.com, which is our website, ton of free resources. We've got a weekly newsletter we send out that'll take you less than 30 seconds to read. Just some quick, tidbits from us. And we have a Growing Your Launch Team course. So if you're planting this year, practicalplanting.com/launch. We have a highly practical, walk you step by step on not just like what to do, grow a team, raise money, but actually how to do it, which is really important. And so that's all of our stuff. Practical Church Planting. Find us anywhere. We're looking forward to this year with you.
It's going to be a good 2022.
It's going to be good.
That's right.
And we'll see you next week on Practical Church Planting.